In this episode, we talk about Jamia Millia Islamia revoking the suspension of students who took part in the Remembrance Day of the anti-CAA protests. We also talk about the allegations that have been levied against Shiv Sena UBT leader Aaditya Thackeray. But first, we talk about protests that are taking place in two different villages in coastal Karnataka over two upcoming commercial ports. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In a small village in coastal Karnataka called Keni, fishermen have been protesting a proposed commercial port which they believe will severely disrupt the region's marine ecology and thereby affect their livelihood. The port, planned as a public-private partnership and estimated to cost over 4,000 crore rupees, is envisaged as an all-weather deep-water commercial facility capable of handling all types of cargo on West Coast in the North Karnataka region. Now, as it turns out, this community is not alone in facing such a problem. In the same district, another village is dealing with a very similar issue. To know more about these protests, my colleague Shashank Bhargava speaks to the Indian Express's Paveneet Chaddha, who reported on these two villages for the paper.
Paveneet, in some sense, this is a very classic example of locals, especially those from economically weaker sections, getting affected by a big multi-crore project, which in this case is a port that has been proposed in Keni. Now, for those who may not know, can you tell us where exactly Keni is?
So, Keni, it comes under Uttar Kannada district in Karnataka. It's very close to Karwar, which is a port which is operated by the Indian Navy.
And could you talk a bit about its demography and what its local economy looks like right now?
Yeah, so it's a small fishing hamlet. The traditional fishermen here have been fishing here for, decades. As per the census of marine fisheries 2016, in this particular village of Keni, there are about 725 families who are traditional fishermen. And almost all of them are very poor. According to the same census, 710 out of those 725 families live below the poverty line. So the rough population estimate of this entire hamlet of this village is about 2,800 people, and almost all of them are dependent on fishing and allied activities.
Right, and like we mentioned earlier, this is where a multi-crore port is planning to come up, and so the fishermen are obviously worried. Tell us what their concerns have been.
Right. So before we get into that, just a little background. On 24th Feb last month, huge protest was organized by the fishermen. About 500 fishermen, including women, just came to the beach shore to protest against a geotechnical survey which was being carried out by the project proponent of the port company. And all the fishermen basically want the project to be scrapped. Now, the fear that the fishermen have is that if the port comes up, their livelihood would be threatened. In the sense that, you see, these are traditional fishermen, they depend on daily catch to survive. And in a way, the economy works is that they fish from the shore and the daily catch is then sold by women of the family by drying and curating in the local markets. So the fear that the fishermen community has is that this port which is coming in inshore waters is where their catchment area is. So there will be a lot of dredging and digging for soil testing, which is what the feasibility study is going on, which will lead to a lot of reclamation of the area. And the fear is that due to that breakwater being constructed, in future, it will disturb a lot of turbidity and soil and coastal sediment of the area. Now, this coastal sediment is nutrient for fishes. So the fishermen fear that the fishes will stop breeding in that, shallow water fishing area, which is where these fishermen rely on for their catch. So they fear once the fishes start coming, they'll not be able to fish.
And Paveneet, you also spoke to a marine biologist, V.N. Nayak. He's a retired professor. What did he have to say about all this?
Right. So he said when a port comes up in inshore area in the waters and a huge breakwater is constructed, it impacts the current pattern, and the revival of biodiversity, he said, will take another at least 15 to 20 years. So due to that dredging and digging, the floor of the sea is disturbed. And due to the reclamation and dredging, all that causes a disturbance and turbidity, due to which there will be a direct impact on the biodiversity and marine habitats. So the reclamation of land through dredging near the shore, it can cause a significant disruption to the entire ecosystem, is what he said.
And Paveneet, after the fishermen started protesting there, tell us about the kind of reaction we saw from the local administration.
Right. So the local administration was aware of the opposition and the protests that may come up in response to the geotechnical survey being carried out. So they had already imposed prohibitory orders in place. Still, about 500 fishermen went to the sea. Some people jumped into the sea also to register their protest. And when I spoke to one of the women who had jumped into the sea and she was hospitalized also, she said that, this is a fight for our livelihood, for our existence. So the administration in Kenny responded. There was a huge police force that was sent. There were a lot of discussions by the police and the deputy commissioner with the local fishermen. And post that day of the protest, there has been a huge convoy of police personnel which patrolled the village. And an interesting thing I found when I visited there in the first week of March is that about 50 to 60 policemen that day had been camping on the beach and sort of, prohibiting fishermen to go near the area where the survey was being carried out. So the fishermen told me that they fear that if they go into the sea to fish, their boats and canoes will be seized by the police.
Right, and while we are talking about these protests in Kenny, in the same district, we understand that similar protests are actually taking place by fishermen because of another proposed port coming up there. So could you talk about where these protests are taking place and what the fishermen there have to say?
Right. So about 65 kilometers from Kenny, in the same Uttar Kannada district, is another fishing hamlet. The village there is Tonka 1 in Kasarkod in Honavar Taluka. And the next morning on February 25th, now these protests were not coordinated. It's just a coincidence. Now this port project has been, stuck in courts for almost a decade, and fishermen have been opposing the project due to similar demands that, once support comes up, our livelihood will be threatened. So on 25th Feb morning, a lot of police personnel marched into the village and they arrested about 24 fishermen who were obstructing the road survey project for this proposed port. Now, as I mentioned, the community has been opposed to the port coming up and it has been stuck in legalese for many years. The environmental clearance for this port project was initially granted in 2012, which expired in 2024 September. And in December 2024, the State Environmental Impact Assessment Authority issued a fresh environmental clearance for the project. So whenever the authorities, initiate some sort of a survey project or initiate commencement of the port project, there is naturally a resistance from the fishermen community. And in this case, on Feb 25th in Kasarkod, police arrested 24 people and filed an FIR against them.
And Paveneet, in these two places, do the fishermen communities have any kind of political support? Does the government offer them any sort of assurances?
See, both the port projects that are coming up are in a public-private partnership. So one of the stakeholders is the state government. Now, like I mentioned, the port in Honavar has been stuck in courts for a very long time. Some fishermen had gone to NGT also to raise protests saying that, the beach, the area where the port is coming up is a turtle nesting site. But in terms of state support, you see, the government says that all these villages in Honavar, they are encroaching on government land. So the government says that we are simply, executing the orders of the court and we are proceeding as per the law. The villagers, meanwhile, claim that, they were granted pattas long ago. In the late 70s, there were floods in the region and a lot of families were displaced. And over the years, due to accretion, a lot of land has been reclaimed and some of the land has not been surveyed. So due to these reasons, the ownership of the land in Honavar is also contested. In that sense, there is always a sort of friction between the state and the fishermen community because, like I mentioned, the ownership of land in Honavar is contested.
And next we talk about Jamia Millia Islamia revoking the suspension of students who took part in the Remembrance Day of the anti-CAA protests. Now, the protests against the Citizenship Amendment Act, as many of you might remember, took place across the country back in 2019. People from all age groups joined in, though it was the student participation which perhaps stood out the most.
One of the centers of protest was also Jamia Millia Islamia in Delhi.
That's the Indian Express's Sohini Ghosh, who reports on law for the paper.
And in 2019, the Delhi police had entered the campus, which was pretty much unheard of, and they had pattern charged students inside the library of the university campus, and the entire police action had basically sparked outrage nationwide.
Now, ever since then, Sohini says the university has been observing Jamia Resistance Day, which commemorates the police brutality that took place that day.
So on December 15th, 2024, par course with all the other years, there was this Jamia Resistance Day commemorating the event. And obviously, the protest did not go down well with the university officials at the time. There were a backlash from the university officials back then.
This, she says, led to another round of protests in February, where left-aligned students spoke out against the coercive action being taken against two PhD scholars at the university.
So organizations like ISA had demanded the withdrawal of the disciplinary actions, and they were also demanding an end to what they described as a crackdown on student activism. Because now Jamia also has this rule where if you're organizing a protest or a gathering, you need prior permission from the university officials. You need their nod first to organize any sort of gathering. So in February, there was a protest along those lines. Students were sleeping outside the canteen, very peaceful protest otherwise. And soon after, the university started cracking down on the students who were participating in this February protests as well.
Within days, the university issued suspension orders for a total of 17 students. This included some who had protested in December and some who had only protested in February.
So the key aspect was they were suspended. That apart, the university also took to a tactic of naming and shaming these protesters because they published their faces and names and put the list out on campus, which also again caused a hue and cry, obviously because violation of privacy, etc. So yeah, the major aspect was the university taking this extreme step of suspending these students. The university's version was basically that they are disrupting academic activities, number one, and number two, they were protesting without permission from the university. This is how the university justified its action.
Sohini says that as a part of their suspension, these 17 students were completely barred from entering the campus and so they could not even attend classes.
So 7 out of the 17 students, they moved Delhi High Court basically challenging the suspension order early on in March, in the first week of March. And the 7 students were basically heard by the Delhi High Court on March 4th. And subsequent to the hearing, the court basically stayed the suspension orders for these 7 students. And for the rest of the 10, I am told now that some of them are still going to move court. 1 or 2 of them have moved court after the March 4th hearing for the 7 students. So it's still an ongoing process from the student side where they are challenging the suspension or the coercive action being taken by the university.
While staying the suspension of the 7 students, the court observed that students do have the right to voice their concerns, especially those pertaining to campus affairs.
So the university can't take this move where it just, it takes a very strong-fisted approach to cracking down on such voicing of concerns, especially if it's a peaceful protest. The court was of the opinion you as a university need to have that kind of largesse. where after all, you are the guardian-like figure for the students. So you can't have to treat them like criminals. It doesn't have to be coercive immediately. And the court also took an approach of mediation in this case, where it said that, okay, the court is going to stay the suspension orders, but let's also make some amends from the university's side. So why don't you form a committee which will basically address the students' grievances or issues, etc., and have student representatives also in this committee, apart from obviously the officials, the administrative officials of the university. So broadly, this is what the court observed.
But a day after the court issued its orders for the 7 students, Sohini says the university issued a notice reinstating them.
Saying that you can attend classes, but you need to maintain decorum. That's it. A very straightforward order by the university. And the order, of course, made a mention that pursuant to the High Court order in this petition, these 7 students, naming the 7 students, their suspension stands revoked. So this was the order that was passed by the university on March 5. On March 12th, for the 10 other students, what the university started doing is they started issuing these orders saying that conditional orders is how I would term it. Basically saying that the disciplinary committee has recommended for revocation of your suspension, and the concerned authority of the university, taking this recommendation into account, has decided that we will be revoking your suspension, but this will be subject to you signing a good conduct bond within 7 working days. Now, soon after the orders were issued, the Holy Weekend came. So technically, the 7 working days clause became effective from 17th March. So essentially, they were given time from 17th March plus 7 days to sign the bond. And it's only after that, only if you sign the bond, do you get to be back in the classes, back on campus.
Now, earlier this week, one of the students, Niranjan KS, had moved the court challenging his suspension order.
But during the course of the hearing, he informed the court that his suspension at the moment stands revoked, courtesy the March 12 order by the university. But he has been told to pay 3,000 rupees as fine because he had participated in the December 2024 event, and subsequently the disciplinary committee has chosen to impose him with a fine of rupees 3,000. Turns out another student, Saurabh Tripathi, a PhD scholar, he also had participated in the December 2024 event, and even by his own admission, he did break a lock of a bathroom during the December event. And because of his action, similarly, the disciplinary committee imposed him with a fine of 5,000. So for these 2 students, Niranjan and Saurabh Tripathi, what the university did was they put these 2 conditions. One is that you have to pay the fine. Second is you have to sign the good conduct bond. Subject to fulfilling of these 2 conditions, only then your suspension stands revoked. So right now, what Niranjan plans to do is he plans to challenge this imposition of the fine before the Jamia authorities, and he has been granted liberty to do the same. And Saurabh, too, while speaking to us, did mention that he plans to challenge this order by the university as well of imposition of fine plus good conduct bond.
Sohini tells us that right now, the students have mainly raised concerns about 2 issues. First, they haven't received any communication from the committee the court directed the university to form. And second, of course, is the issue of the good conduct bond.
Because the bond basically says that any sort of rule violation, firstly, you have to give a strict commitment that you will uphold all university rules and regulations by submitting this bond. And it is important to remember here that basically the university rules right now say that you can't have any gathering, any protest without the university permission. So it becomes a double-edged sword. So the moment you are participating in any protest, any gathering, say in the coming December 2025, if they choose to hold another Remembrance Day event, these people could be expelled or rusticated. There's what the bond basically says. So obviously the bond comes with some contentious terms, and right now the students are basically mulling whether they should go to court, challenging this, etc.
And in the end, we talk about Shiv Sena UBT leader Aaditya Thackeray dismissing the allegations against him in the Disha Salian case as an attempt to tarnish his reputation and said that he would respond to them in the court. His comments came a day after Satish Salian, father of Disha Salian, the former manager of late actor Shashank Singh Rajput, moved the Bombay High Court seeking a fresh investigation into the circumstances surrounding her death. The petition demanded that an FIR be registered against Thackeray and that the probe be transferred to the Central Bureau of Investigation. The petition further alleged that a politically motivated cover-up was carried out to protect influential individuals. Thackeray, a former Maharashtra minister, told reporters, quote, "Attempts have been made for the last 5 years to malign my image. We will present our side in the court and respond to the allegations there." Unquote. Disha Salian died on 8th June 2020 after reportedly falling from the 14th floor of a residential building in Malad. The Mumbai police had initially registered an accidental death report. 6 days later, Bollywood actor Shashank Singh Rajput was found dead in his Bandra apartment in what was ruled a suicide. Targeting Thackeray, BJP Minister Nitesh Rane cited Supreme Court's rulings and claimed that if a person faces allegations of rape, they should be arrested. He also demanded Thackeray's resignation as an MLA. In response, Shiv Sena UBT leader Ambadas Danve, leader of opposition in the Legislative Council, accused the BJP of orchestrating the allegations against Thackeray and said that the government was free to conduct an investigation. NCP SP leader Jatendra Ahwad also questioned the timing of the allegations, asking why Disha Salian's father has remained silent for 5 years. As the controversy around Salian's death resurfaced, Mumbai police maintained that their investigations found no evidence of foul play. During the December 2023 Maharashtra Assembly session, BJP leader Nitesh Rane raised the issue, prompting the Mahayuti government to form a special investigation team under Additional Police Commissioner Rajiv Jain. However, the SIT sources told the Indian Express that despite issuing multiple summons to those alleging foul play, including Salian's family members and Rane, no one came forward to record statements, leading to a dead end. Mumbai police had previously closed the case in 2021, stating that neither their inquiry nor the CBI's probe into Shashank Singh Rajput's death found any connection or evidence of criminal involvement in Salian's death. Allegations on social media, including claims that she attended parties with politicians or was pregnant, were debunked by CCTV footage, post-mortem reports, and witness statements. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank Bhargava and me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.